time is not on the Lady Vols side. 3 straight games now where we've seen a lack of consistent effort. And if they don't get that turned on and turned around fast, then this team is going to look exactly as Coach Kim Caldwell describes. Silly. I'm Paige Dauer. This is the Sports Page.
And if you go out there and you don't give effort, you're going to look silly, and that's what happened for the first 2 quarters.
Now, Tennessee is 2-1 on the season, and they're still in the top 10 in the latest AP poll. But as I go back and watch the film, there's one major concern that I have, but it's creating 2 problems in 2 different categories. And my main concern is effort, or I guess the lack thereof it, or just the inconsistency of the effort. Now, Coach Kim Caldwell, she's been very candid this season, as she typically is, but this time it's about her displeasure in the team. And when I go back and I watch the tape, what stands out to me is how this team decides when to turn it on. I think we talked about that at length following the NC State game, and I think the mindset of waiting to react instead of acting allowed NC State to erase Tennessee's 10-point lead and win a game that Tennessee absolutely should have. And I think it's that mindset that trickled into the game against ETSU. For me, I thought for the most part Tennessee looked really well. I really enjoyed Jada Civil getting the start there, and the effort and spark that she brings to the team. Z Spearman looked really comfortable from the perimeter. But Kim Caldwell didn't really pay much mind to that. She was incredibly frustrated in her team's effort. And I think rebounding is the perfect example of where we can see the discrepancy of effort and the inconsistency of it in these games. I think it's what contributed to NC State, again, erasing that lead that the Lady Vols had. But sometimes it's hard to see if you just look at the box score because those stats were very even across the board. But it is glaring against ETSU. Tennessee had the size advantage in this game as well against ETSU. ETSU has 3 players that are 6 feet and taller. 2 of them are freshmen. Yet somehow they were dominated on the offensive boards. And you go and you look at the end of the game, it's not super glaring either because it's 17-24 when it comes to the rebounding battle for Tennessee on the offensive side. But it was absolutely apparent in the first half. Tennessee, having the size advantage, had just 4 offensive rebounds in the first half against ETSU. And they had 15. ETSU ended with 24 defensive rebounds to Tennessee's 17 offensive rebounds. And that's a certain type of attitude that is becoming very unacceptable for Coach Kim Caldwell, because Z Spearman highlighted how what's contributing to their inefficiency, let's say with rebounding, has to come down to not boxing out. She says it's a simple answer. But what I'm finding in these first 3 games is that it's not a simple fix. And Coach Kim Caldwell says that it comes down to the team wanting it themselves, that it's not going to change until they decide that their effort is worth it when it comes to the battle on the boards.
It's a hard adjustment to make in game. And we talk about it every single day. We stat it every single day. We show it on film every single day. We put a bubble on the rim so that people can't make baskets. So we have to box out and we have to rebound, and they just have to make up their mind that it's important enough.
And the most frustrating part about this season so far is that they absolutely do play hard when they have to. When it's crunch time and they need to save the win or they need to push forward to the win, they suddenly can do everything that's required. And we, again, saw that last night. Against an FCS school in UT Martin, Tennessee ended on a 5-minute scoring drought. And most of their shots were from long range, despite the fact that they had 32 points in the paint and were 12 of 16 on layups. So why go away from what was working? My only explanation is that they saw that UT Martin also wasn't scoring, that they too were in a scoring drought, and Tennessee had a decent lead, so they didn't need to attack the basket. So they just kind of had these desperation shots and they just throw it up. Now I understand Tennessee is a new team. A lot from the transfer portal, a lot from the freshman class, not a ton of returning players on this team. They're also adjusting, dealing with the dismissal of Ruby Whitehorn, which is a lot emotionally and mentally, losing your top scorer and a friend on the team. But at some point, this team has to move on. They have to decide to invest and play for the women who are still on this team. I understand that they're wounded and it's going to take time. But at this point in the season, these losses could become costly if they can't mentally move on. Opponents are not going to take it easy on them. Tennessee's not the only one who's dealing with roster turnover, right? When you go to UT Martin again, 9 of their players are underclassmen. Majority of them are freshmen as well, and they still looked connected. And that's where the second concern in the major category arrives. Despite the new faces and new places, they have to figure out a way to have better chemistry on the court. And it rears its head in turnovers. In each of the 3 games this season, it's double-digit turnovers for Tennessee. And against UT Martin, that absolutely kept them in this game. 23 turnovers, or 22 turnovers for Tennessee equated to 19 points for UT Martin. A lot of that comes down to poor decision-making, poor communication, and just lack of ball security and not handling the ball very well. And an FCS opponent like UT Martin was able to go on the other end and put it in for 19 points. That will be a huge deciding factor for this team if they can't win the offensive rebounds and they're struggling to take care of the ball. I mostly say that the clock is ticking for Tennessee and that they're running out of time because I'm looking ahead in the schedule. I know that they can't necessarily do that, but I certainly can. We certainly can. After this 3-game stretch, starting with Belmont, which we'll have post-game coverage on Thursday, they go across the country to California to take on UCLA and Stanford. UCLA at this time that we're recording this on Monday is 3rd in the country. And Stanford is finally receiving some votes with how they are looking this season so far. So when you're going up against those teams who do have size advantage, they were in the NCAA tournament a season ago. I don't even know if this game will look as close as it did for Tennessee as it did in their last top 10 matchup against NC State if they don't figure out how to have effort in boxing out for offensive rebounds and they don't take care of the ball more and they limit their turnovers. They can't afford to have double-digit turnovers, even if it's 10, against UCLA or maybe even Stanford and still come out with a win. But I know that sounds a little bit critical for a Monday morning, but I think that's just the state that they're in. We haven't heard many positive things from Coach Kim Caldwell to start the season, and going back and looking at the film, I think you can agree for the most part, hopefully with a couple days rest and, a couple of days to really look at film and practice, that Belmont game hopefully looks really good. Hopefully, much like New Mexico State for Tennessee football, you feel bad for the opponent, right? You hope that this is a game where Tennessee and the Lady Vols can really get out whatever frustration that they had, and it's a really strong bounce-back win. They both need to continue to move up in the AP poll. In fact, Josh Heupel and company, despite being on a bye week, moved up a couple of spots. We'll hear from Josh Heupel later today, and we'll see if that had any impact on the psyche for this team as the last 3 games are finally on deck, and they look to have a really strong postseason with their bowl selection, maybe even in Tampa. We shall see. So make sure your notifications are on, and I'll talk to you guys later today.